What's up guys, I'm Glenn and this is the new WRAITH X. Today we're going to go over MTW installation, as well as basic maintenance on this episode of What the Tech. Before we get started, if you haven't checked out the WRAITH X technical overview video, go check it out for a more in-depth look at the product features. You'll find that linked down below. To get started, we're just going to take the MTW and throw it on a vise block. Don't worry if you don't have one, you can do it without it. It just makes it a lot easier. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove the body pins. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the stock from the buffer tube. And then you're going to need a standard armor's wrench to remove the castle nut. If you don't have one, don't worry, you can go ahead and do it with a punch. Then you'll just want to slide the sling plate back carefully. On some of the older MTWs, there's a spring down here that you want to be sure not to lose, so be careful when you unscrew it. And you might want to go ahead and remove your detent spring and set it aside just so you don't lose it. Next, we're just going to install the WRAITH X stock. So you want to take your electronics and just tuck them down there into the grip to get them nice and out of the way. Now we'll just take the WRAITH X stock and thread on the castle nut. Then we'll take the sling plate and install it like so. Now we'll just take the whole assembly and thread it into the back of the receiver. You want to make sure not to screw your stock past this face of your receiver. If it extends too far, just back it off one turn and you'll be fine. At this point, you'll just reinstall your spring, line back up the stock, and then hold down the sling plate, and just finger tighten the castle nut right down onto the back of it, and just snug it back down. And that's it for the lower receiver. The first thing we're going to want to do on the upper is take out the engine. To do that, we'll just want to lift out the contact yoke, and just carefully unplug it from the back of the engine. Now we'll go ahead and tuck the airline down through the back of the receiver. Then we'll just take a tool and lift out the feed tube. Next, you can slide your engine right out the back. For this next part, you'll want to be sure you're in a clean environment so you don't introduce any FOD to your system. But you'll take a 1/4-inch wrench, loosen up your airline, just unthread that from the back of the valve housing. Then you'll take your included mini airline and just thread that right into the back. Then you can take your 1/4-inch wrench again and just gently snug that down. It doesn't have to be too tight. Next, you'll take the barb that's also included with your stock, thread it into the back of the airline adapter. Once again, take the 1/4-inch wrench and just snug it down. Then you'll take this whole assembly, hold on to it pretty firmly, take the airline that's sticking out the back of the engine, and with the two pieces aligned like this, you'll just firmly press and wiggle the two pieces until they go all the way together. You'll just want to make sure that the shoulder on the back of your fitting goes up flush with the tubing. Now we'll go ahead and put everything back together. You're going to take your engine with the airline oriented up, just slide it into the back of the receiver. Then you'll take your wiring harness and slide it through. Then you can bend your airline out of the way and just plug the wiring harness right into the back of the solenoid. At which point you can slide your engine back up into the receiver. Next, we'll slide the engine up until the groove lines up with the notches on each side, and just hold it in place at the back. And you can snap your feed tube right back in place. And then once you make sure that your airline is centered between the two sides of the receiver, you can just take your contact yoke and press it right back in. One thing that's worth mentioning before we continue is that if you find yourself wanting to run a traditional tank and airline setup for a certain event, All you need to do is swap back over the airline. You can keep the whole rest of the WRAITH X attached to your lower receiver and just use it for a buffer tube until you want to switch back and use your WRAITH X for your air source. And next, we'll go ahead and put the upper receiver back onto the lower receiver. First, make sure your body pins are pulled out, and then you'll just want to take the airline adapter and angle the whole receiver back just a little bit to get that down into place. Don't force it, shouldn't take too much. You want to be sure that the springs on the board don't get hung up on the screws on the contact yoke when you slide it back together. And then just pop your body pins back into place. In your kit, you'll find an included little base plate with an O-ring on it. They'll simply push into the bottom of the grip, and that way you can run your battery and your electronics just in your grip right there. Lastly, you'll want to take your stock and slide it onto the buffer tube. And that is a completed WRAITH X installation on an MTW. To get started, let's talk about the regulator portion of the WRAITH X stock. The regulator on here is the exact same technology as the Cat 5 Storm regulator. In fact, the internals are exactly the same, it's just a new cap. To ensure the best long-term performance of your WRAITH X, you're going to want to take some silicone-based lubricant and spray it in the hole that will be found on one of the 4 flats of your regulator cap. And you'll just want to put a spray of the lubricant into the hole every few uses or before long-term storage. To adjust the pressure on your Cat 5 regulator, you'll just want to take the included 3/32 hex key, and to turn the pressure up, just rotate it clockwise, and to turn the pressure down, simply rotate it counterclockwise. For more information on the Storm Cat 5 regulator, see either the video dedicated to it or the owner's manual for the Cat 5, both linked down below. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the internals of your WRAITH X stock. To do that, you're going to want to take the included 2mm hex key and loosen the screw on the front of your buffer tube. Then simply unscrew the Cat 5 regulator from the buffer tube and unscrew the expansion chamber from the bottom of the regulator. The WRAITH X is designed to give you great performance for a very long time, so you hopefully will never have to do this. But in the off chance that you start to develop a leak around the CO2 cartridge, here's how you're going to replace your seal. There's a seal up inside here behind the threads. And to service it, you'll just want to take either an adjustable wrench or an 18mm wrench, put it on the flats of the expansion chamber, and then take a 15mm socket and back out the screw that clamps it all together. Next, we're just going to take an O-ring pick and gently lift the old seal out, and then place the new seal that's included with your WRAITH X right around the puncture pin. Next, to reassemble it, you'll just take the threaded ring. Be careful to make sure that your seal stays on center. And then you'll take the wrench and your socket and just hand tighten it back together. You don't need to over torque it. You want to be careful because tightening it too much can cause damage to your system. While we have this apart from maintenance, we can go ahead and inspect the O-ring around the top end of the expansion chamber for damage, and if you see that it's damaged, you can go ahead and replace it with the included 015 O-ring that is in your O-ring kit. Next, you'll just want to take a little bit of silicone-based lubricant, put it around the O-ring there, and then you can go ahead and screw it all back together. Put the expansion chamber into the regulator, and then install the regulator back into the buffer tube. The buffer tube has all 4 of these slots all the way around it. And when you reinstall this, you want to make sure that one of them lines up straight up and down with the slot on the bottom of the buffer tube. So now you'll take your 2mm hex key and you can snug the screw down pretty good. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to drop a like and go check out the channel for other great videos just like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you out in the field.